So this video is going to be looking at two short topics. So Nero's military success and his relationship with the Senate, the equestrians and the plebs. You can see from the sources we've got 2 coins, some Tacitus, and some Suetonius. So we can see from the coin, this is to do with the supposed conquest of Armenia. Now Augustus had dealt with Armenia during his reign, and the situation had become difficult again for the Romans. So Nero had sent a gentleman called Corbello, which I will type on, which was his general. This guy here. So he was sent. Oh, that's correct. Sorry, he was sent to deal with the issues of Armenia, which we'll look at in lesson. As a result of his actions, there is a success, and the glory is transferred to Nero simply because Nero was the overall commander of the army, which is very typical, obviously, of the emperors and having the system since under Augustus. So we could show this as Nero trying to, again, emulate Augustus in many ways. He's sending out, obviously, his generals. He's getting the success. He's extending the empire. He's bringing peace to the empire. The S in the C shows that it was sanctioned by the Senate, as in giving him the triumph. He's a great military leader alongside all of his other actions as well. So obviously this military success would have helped his relationship with the 3 main groups in Rome, which is why I've put these 2 together. Plus there's only one source really talking about his military successes because he doesn't have any other than Armenia. Obviously in terms of relationship with the Senate, this would help because he's this great commander and therefore acting like a true Roman emperor. Now this source is coming straight after the death of Agrippina. So obviously, remember, Nero had arranged the death of Agrippina and then was understandably quite worried that he would get the blame. And that's when he had sort of set up a sort of a fake conspiracy, in fact, that she was going to kill him. So he's coming back into Rome, and this is where it says, he's worried. He's really anxious about how people are going to respond to, obviously, him after the death of Agrippina. Have they kind of swallowed the story? So would he find obedience in the Senate? That kind of tells you about their relationship as well between Nero and the Senate. Would people like him? But it turns out that the name of Agrippina was abhorred, and her death had won him the applause of the nation. So he gains support as a result of this conspiracy, in inverted commas, that Agrippina supposedly had passed against him. Fine. On his return, on terms of on the road he was travelling into Rome, it says that there was tiers of seats of the type used for viewing a triumph. So his return to Rome is kind of equal to a triumph because he has been sort of saved from Agrippina, saved from his mother. So this kind of could show that he has quite a positive relationship at this point with the Senate. Obviously, this is always in the context of his other behaviours that were going on at the time. So don't use this particular source on its own. It does need to put into context of all the other events. We then have a short section about his relationship specifically with the equestrians. We do have this beginning of the Tacitus talk about how he wants to drive chariots and do race horses, which builds on points we talked about in terms of behaviour. When he first comes into power, we have the idea he can no longer be checked, so nobody could control him. So again, at the moment, to be honest, this is nothing to do with the equestrians. I'm well aware of this. It's basically the last sentence that puts it into the section. Sorry, my cat is making an absolute racket downstairs. Anyway, sorry, getting distracted. The Roman people received an invitation in form and began to sing his praise, began to hymn his praises, So the people really like him. Again, nothing to do with the equestrians particularly, and very specifically. But what we do have is, in order to hold these festivals, he was inducing the knights to promise their services in the arena for what we call by an enormous bounty. So they were kind of being paid to take part in the festivals, the games, etc., alongside Nero. So they're being used by Nero, I think, is generally the point that Tacitus is trying to make eventually. And then we have something a bit more relevant, more specifically relevant to the plebs. So this could be some contradiction in terms of his behaviour towards them. So according to Suetonius, Nero showed no greater mercy to the common folk. Okay, and this is to do with the fire of Rome. So this is where the story comes that it was Nero's fault. So according to Suetonius, Nero was pretending to be disgusted by the drab old buildings and narrow winding streets. He brazenly set fire to the city. Except we know that Nero wasn't even in the city when this happened. So this is an outright lie from Suetonius. He would have heard this from other stories. And he says, he coveted the sites of several granaries near the Golden House. He wants to expand the palace, and therefore he set the granaries on fire as well. Again, we know that's not true. Nero watched the fire from the Tower of Asenus, enraptured by what he called the beauty of the flames, and put on his Trajan's costume and sang the sack of Ilium from beginning to end. So that's the whole story of him, where we have this phrase what. I can't even speak properly. Fiddling while Rome burned. This is not true. We know this didn't happen because we know he was helping people and opening up the palace, etc., as we talked about in previous source videos. So this is where the sort of the propaganda around Nero comes from. Suetonius also suggests that Nero wants to take the opportunity from the fire to collect as much loot and spoils as possible for himself. Okay, maybe, probably not. He opened a fire relief fund and insisted on contributions, which led the provincials white and practically beggared all private citizens. So that's obviously talking about the tax, essentially, that was set up to pay for the rebuilding of Rome, which, like I said previously, you do need money to rebuild a city, and a large part of the city had burned down. So he did need the funds. However, if you're going to build it in really pretty stone at very high expense, it's going to cost a lot of money. And unfortunately, he hasn't got it. So yes, the tax was very high, and that's why, again, he's sort of seen by history as not being a very good emperor. Ooh, sorry, let me scroll down a little bit more. We then have this rather nice little coin, Q14. So basically showing that he's giving out the grain dole, so he's helping the people. Doesn't need much more explanation than that, to be completely honest. I like some of these later coins, they're a little bit more obvious about what's going on. And then we have another section of Suetonius. So this kind of contradicts. Obviously, at the beginning, he was like, he had no mercy for the common folk. But at the same time, he gave out an immense variety of entertainments. What is it, Suetonius? What's the truth? We have got the promotion of the knights. So he reserved seats for the knights at the circus, as he'd done in the theatre. So questions are being promoted. There's a really big festival called the Great Festival, really original name. And throughout the festival, all kinds of gifts were scattered to the people. There's some quite interesting examples of things that were going on. So we've got plays, we've got some elephants, there's another play, it's lovely. In terms of the gifts to people, we've got loads of birds, some food parcels. Why didn't I highlight food parcels? I don't know if I highlight it now. We've got vouchers for grain. There's loads of things, quite good stuff that he's giving out to the people, which obviously would make him really, really popular with the people. But obviously costs a lot of money, which is a problem. We're nearly done, actually. Then we have this section of Tacitus again. So we've got this idea that he is kind of promoting the sort of plays. So he sort of sets up some new games. We've got the juvenile games, fine. Distribution of coin, fine. There's not a huge amount to pick out, really. He promotes the equestrian class again by enrolling more people into the Augustiani, which is a family of like a tribe of knights. Okay, cool. There's kind of talk about here that he was sort of acting with debauchery and scandal. But this is just Tacitus kind of looking down in quite a lot because he was doing lots of games. And remember, he's not acting like a true Roman emperor should do. He is acting quite excessively. And that's why people are possibly a little bit unhappy with his behaviour. And again, this last section, to be completely honest, is not particularly exciting. So he basically reads some poetry and then he holds some dinner parties and talks to philosophers. And that is essentially all that last section of Tacitus talks about, which I'm sure is delightful detail, but not particularly relevant to what we're talking about. So what can we pick out in terms of overall then about his relationship with the three groups? The Senate, he seems to expect obedience. The people, he gives out loads of stuff to. And the equestrians, he pretty much promotes and also uses them for his own ends, which I guess is very similar to some of the behaviour we looked at previously with some of the other emperors.